How's it going, everyone? Mike the Warhost here, and today we finally have the Dixie Resurrection Posse unboxing. It's been a long time coming. I ended up waiting almost 6 weeks for this box to arrive. Finally glad it made it here. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. And this box is a little bit more beat up than some of the others I received. I'm guessing this just had a rough trip across the ocean. Okay. All right, there we go. You see, standard Wild West Exodus slipcase. If you're new to the game, this is how all of the posses come. It's a nice step up from just a regular plain cardboard box. Of course, we have our standard flyer with the cerulean mimic in the front. Some basic information about the game, including a QR code that links you to all the assembly guides, bit of social media information. And the cards. Okay. So far, all the ones that I've opened have come with the most up-to-date cards, and this one is no exception. As you can see in the corner there, once I can get it in, these cards are version 1.08, which at the time of recording is the most up-to-date version. So we got the Posse card there. Oh, this is nice. This also comes with the faction armory as well, which will really help put together. It'll help you put together lists on the fly. All the stuff there on the back. The rule for reanimated. And then, of course, the positive and negative conditions card. Then all of the unit cards as well. So here we have Miss Annabelle Hamilton, Ross Mackay. This looks like it just comes with the regular version of the card, not the mounted one. So if you want to run the mounted version, you'll have to download and print the card from the site. Here we have Unger. Focus. There we go. Mr. Wendell Lee, if you remember him from the Galvanic Mysteries unboxing, I mentioned I'll be running him in that list as well as this one. Bloody Bill Anderson. And rounding things out today with Donovan. Well, let's start opening up some of these packages and see what we have here. Let's start with this one right here. This one seems to be pretty packed. All right. Okay, so here we have Miss Annabelle Hamilton and Ross Mackay. I really have to check the pronunciation of his name. It could be Mackay, it could be Mackay. I've only heard it pronounced by Warcrail staff, and based on some of their pronunciations that could be off, especially when it comes to words in Spanish. I'm sorry, Stuart, but hearing you pronounce conquistadors as conquistadors was just nails on a chalkboard. All right. I have a couple of bits here. There's a bit of flashing on Bloody Bill's arms right there, but doesn't look like anything too serious. I'm not seeing any major mold lines stand out. And here we have Bloody Bill's torso and a random hat and a gun. Oh, this is for Annabelle Hamilton there. All right, next package. Oh, these ones are actually pretty well packed compared to the last two that I've opened. Each one of these little bubble wrap packages has 2 or 3 different sprues in them. Here we got some big, beefy arms. Missing for one of the 2 constructs. I'm guessing these are probably going to be for Unger. More bits, including a belt for his Gatling gun. We'll see how assembling that works, but I've had less than stellar luck in the past assembling resin minis with ammo belts like this one. So hopefully Unger won't be too painful to assemble. And here we have the last few bits of one of our constructs here. Right. Next one. Here we have Wendell Lee and Donovan. There's a tiny bit of flashing right here. You can see, but not that bad at all. And what appears to be a mold line right in here. All right, come on, camera, focus. But again, nothing too serious. And maybe a little bit of cleanup right there too. Some more bits for these two. Yeah, the flashing here is a bit more pronounced. And you got that little chunk of resin on the blade there. Nothing really to worry about. And the last couple of bits. These ones I'm a bit more concerned about for the same reason that I'm concerned about Unger's belt. These ones look a bit more. These ones are a lot thinner and a lot flimsier, so I may have some initial issues getting those assembled, but we shall see. And of course, rounding everything out are the bases. Let's see, got 5 small bases and a single medium. So, there we go. That's what the sprues themselves look like. Yeah. Alright, I will be back shortly. Oh, come on, focus. Focus. There we go. Alright, I'll be back shortly once everything is assembled to let you know how it all goes together. Alright, and here we are with the completed Dixie Resurrection Posse. The issues that I had brought up initially, while they were there, were not as prevalent as I thought they were going to be. But I did uncover one more that I definitely want you guys to be aware of. So we'll go ahead and get the worst out of the way. And that is poor Mr. Ross Mackay. Probably can't see it from right there, so give me just a second. And yeah, in the renders and images and whatnot, you'll see him standing there with his finger pointing like that. That finger is incredibly delicate. Let's get in focus. There we go. Yep, that finger is incredibly thin and delicate, and if you're not careful, it will snap off. Mine did at some point during the assembly. I'm not entirely sure where, and I'm not even going to try bothering to find that little bit of resin. So if yours survives the build process, then this is definitely something you're going to have to keep an eye on when you're storing and transporting him. Because yeah, he looks a bit goofy now, just pointing out there with a nub, but there's not a whole lot I can do about it right now. The other issues were some of these cables and belts on Donovan and Unger specifically. Donovan wasn't quite as bad as I thought. Fortunately, these cables are thick enough to not need a whole lot of extra wiggling and bending and whatnot. They did end up sitting a little bit off, especially the one there on the right. You can see that. So I will probably just end up adding a bit of green stuff to sort of connect those together. Unger was nowhere near as bad as I was initially dreading. There's a tiny little gap right there where the belt meets the Gatling gun. Again, a tiny bit of green stuff or some gap filler, and he'll be all set. Other than that, this came together very well. I did have to do a bit of extra cleanup on Unger, just getting rid of where the gate meets the actual miniature piece. It took a bit longer just because these are some pretty hefty chunks of resin, so they required some pretty hefty gates. Nothing too serious, just something to be aware of if you're trying to get these built and ready to go on a bit of a timetable. If you notice the little bit that I initially thought was some flashing on when to leave there, no, that's actually part of the miniature. My mistake. Good thing I double checked that before I started clipping. Flashing, virtually none. I did see a little bit on Wendell's blade. I think there might be some tiny little remnants left. I still have to go through and do a bit more cleanup on these before I prime them. But yeah, there was a bit on the blade there. Nothing serious. Bloody Bill had some flashing on his blades when they were on the sprue, but again, those cleaned up beautifully. No real issue there. So yeah, great kit to put together. Pay attention to what you're doing with Ross here. If you don't, then he will end up suffering for it. So now that you have your shiny new Dixie Resurrection Posse built up, what's the best way to use it?
The Confederate Rebellion Posse gives you a great deal of flexibility in building your list. Annabelle Hamilton's posse can be taken alongside any other Enlightened or Outlaw posse, though you will get the most mileage out of a Confederate force of some sort thanks to the Dixie Resurrections theme bonus, giving the Confederate keyword to all units in her posse once the threshold has been met. With this in mind, there are 3 main avenues for building a tournament-sized list around her. Option 1, hands-heavy Dixie Resurrection. Option 2, secondary posse to Stonewall Jackson. Number 3, balanced Dixie Resurrection force. If you choose the hands-heavy route, then you'll be looking at up to 6 slots for hands units, giving you the option of simply flooding the board with warm-ish bodies to keep your opponent distracted with tar pits. If you go this route, however, I would highly recommend stocking up on as many face units as possible that come with Carpathogen, as these hands units will require some additional babysitting in order to get the most out of them. This will also severely limit the effectiveness of your Rebel Yell ability, as it only has an 8-inch range and there is only 1 face unit available in this setup that can bring more. If you really like your lightened hands though, and don't fear any template or blast weapons your opponent has, then by all means go for it. A variant of this list would feature a full Confederate Rebellion posse as the primary, led by Stonewall Jackson, with a Dixie Resurrection posse as an allied force. Doing this would still leave you a bit strapped for Carpathogen, but would give you plenty of access to Rebel Yell to give units in range a +1 to their limit. Annabelle would most likely be restricted to babysitting duty to keep the hands units alive, but this would also provide a decent form of bubble wrap for her to keep your opponent at bay. Bringing along John Wesley Hardin in the Stonewall Jackson posse also opens up the possibility of portal shenanigans, which can add an additional layer of mobility to Annabelle. If you want a more balanced approach to the Dixie Resurrection, that is entirely doable. If you look at the Posse card, you'll find that you can fit the entire contents of the box into just 3 slots. Slots 1, 3, and 4 specifically, leaving space for up to 2 hands units and either an Outlaw support or a Confederate unit. Taking this list along with 2 units of 5 Abomination Widowers with a grenade launcher and flamethrower respectively, along with a pair of Bandit Outriders will come in at 1,495 points. Should you want a bit more Carpathogen support, you can swap out Unger and Donovan for Jedediah Smith and a pair of K9 attack dogs for protection. Judicious use of Rebel Yell will also keep this unit effective after using Carpathogen to bring them back if Ross Mackay is in range. Dropping a single Abomination Widower will also give you enough points to put Ross on an Iron Horse as well for additional mobility and firepower. In all honesty, this sounds like the most fun list option available, though I will need to try it out on the table to see how effective my theory crafting actually is. Alright, well that's going to do it for me today. Stay tuned, I have some painting tutorials on the way, a couple of tactics discussions, and hopefully by the end of the year, my first battle report. Take care, everyone.